His acceptance speech as the Democratic nominee for president in a football stadium in Denver on the anniversary of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. Later, he'll be indoors for his renomination speech. Already on Wednesday, he made a cameo in the company of former President Bill Clinton. Obama will be looking to energize the faithful and convince the few, yes, there are a few of them, undecided voters watching on television in an election that's tight. Here in France, where Barack Obama can do no wrong, many wonder why it's so close against a Republican candidate who's been described as, well, uninspiring. Amid a timid recovery, has the change you can believe in mantra worn thin? Or is it Obama himself, who, now that he's in the White House, needs to do more to connect with voters? Today in the France 24 debate, does Obama still have it? With us, they work for the same law firm here in Paris, but they're not on the same side of the aisle politically. Forrest Alanya supports the Democrats, welcome sir, and Kate Kushner, the Republicans. You should quit your day job and just put a webcam near the coffee machine. Also with us, Martin Michelot of the German Marshall Fund think tank. Thank you for being with us. And for a look at the messages getting out there, remember this is the most expensive campaign in history of any country, the history of any country. Freddie Winkler of ad agency J. Walter Thompson. Thank you, sir, for being with us. Yeah. The France 24 debate, where you can always weigh in on the conversation on Facebook and on Twitter. You can find us at François F24. Now, first, though, let's go to Charlotte, North Carolina. Nathan King, our correspondent, is there. Hi, Nathan, let me ask you, are all of these conventions the same?
You know, I've been to a few in my time, and you know what this one reminds me most of? It's George W. Bush's re-election back in 2004, where they had it in New York, and the theme was you can't swap horses in midstream. Now, the policies may be different. George W. Bush, of course, was talking about the Iraq and Afghanistan war. Here we're talking about rebuilding the middle class and the economy, but the sentiment and the optics are very, very similar. That we put this guy in, we're going to back him 100%. And in that sense, I think those two conventions are very similar. But, you know, look at Tampa, a very, very different feeling in the hall just a week ago than here. The enthusiasm here has been a lot greater, although the task may be very hard indeed, considering the poll ratings for a president who had tremendous poll ratings at the beginning of his term and is now basically neck and neck with an uninspiring, as some people think, Republican rival.
You say that the enthusiasm is higher there. What are the tangible signs, Nathan?
Well, I mean, you see it from the cheers in the crowd. You see it when people are paying attention, for example, to speakers, not texting or checking their email. You see it from the lines of people, you know, coming in early and wanting to mix with their fellow delegates. The smiles on the faces when you come out, all this sort of intangible stuff that you see, and also the fact that the whole sort of city seems to be abuzz with the convention as well. So it's a very nice sort of party atmosphere here, despite the hard work that has to be done up until the election in November.
One final question for you, Nathan. 2008, it was the mother of all campaigns. It was a fascinating primary. There was a fascinating general election. Are people interested this time around?
I think there is a difference. The enthusiasm that Obama and the Hillary Clinton primaries obviously engendered is not there. The attention is not there. But one thing that has changed is that people's economic circumstances have been on a roller coaster the last 4 years, and everyone knows that there is a distinct choice in the election between two very different ways of tackling this country's economic problems. So if you're going to be talking about pocketbook issues, which of course is the most important thing for Americans right now, then there is no reason not to vote in this election, and that's where everyone is going to be focusing on. You know, a lot of focus has been on independents and the swing voters who may decide this election. The talk here is very much about getting out the base. That will decide this election. They want people to do it on the pocketbook issues that matter to them.
All right, Nathan King, thanks for your coverage, and it'll be continuing later on from Charlotte, North Carolina, where Nathan will be covering Barack Obama's speech. Now, it wasn't all enthusiasm, by the way, in the convention hall on Wednesday. There was some booing, some confusion. when the Democratic Party put up its platform and endorsed Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and reinstated references to God. There was confusion among some of the delegates, and conservative columnists were quick to seize on the moment. Wednesday, in this Thursday's Washington Post, Jennifer Rubin describing Wednesday as a horror show for the Democrats, adding Wednesday was a wonderful political day for Republicans. And I guess when you look at this, Freddie Winkler, at the different what it is really is these conventions. Last week it was Republican, this week it's the Democrats. It's all about spin, and in today's world, it's just each side preaches to his own.
Well, it's each side preaches to its own, obviously, because I think the difference with what we have here is you have a much more radical point of view between the Republicans and Democrats, whereas in France, everyone is closer towards the center, unless you take the very extreme parties.
Really?
Yes, I mean, a lot of people say, the right-wing, left-wing policies are not that different, and there was not many big debates about the politics during this, or nothing that we can really remember. When you take just the issue of abortion, they have very, very radical points of view. Gay marriage, very, very radical points of view. So a lot of the Democrats are speaking towards the sort of, to the hardcore Democrats, and the Republicans to the hardcore Republicans. And I think that's the big difference that we have between what's happening there and here.
Martin Michelot?
Absolutely. I mean, right now, this election will be played out by mobilizing the base. Contrary to what we can often hear, since 2000, it's not the independent voters who decide the election. Right now, the latest numbers say that there are less than 10% of people who have not decided who they'll vote for. This is why the pocketbook issues are so important. This is why you're going to have to talk to the progressives, talk to the people who are in favor of gay marriage. These issues tend to be now more important than talking to the people in Ohio or Florida who do not have the same say in the vote as before.
When you look at the way the conventions have unfolded, it's true that we've heard all the speeches time and again. Forrest Delanya, it's been about jobs, it's been about pocketbook issues. Do you wish it was more broad, the spectrum? It was the same at the Republican convention, by the way.
No, I think the reality is that the United States is faced with the greatest economic crisis that it's faced since the Great Depression. It really is the issue, and it's the issue that I think people should be focused on. The economic disparity between the wealthy and the least and the poor is greater than it's been since the Gilded Age. So it really is, I think, the moment to battle out some of these issues. And I don't think they're of Barack Obama's creation. I mean, he inherited them from his predecessor, and essentially the Republicans are saying you should have done a better job cleaning up our mess.
Kate Kushner, you heard our correspondent Nathan King saying, well, the applause meter is running higher at the Democratic convention than it was at the Republicans.
Well, a lot of that is you've got a candidate who has been meting out favors to the different factions within the Democratic Party for the last 4 years. He's built up his base, so obviously they're happy with him. The question is, are the people watching at home excited to hear the same speeches they've been hearing for the last 4 years? Or in the case of, you saw President Clinton's speech last night, same speech I've been listening to since I was 16 and he was first elected. I mean, it's the same old wine and the same old bottles.
That speech, we can hear an excerpt from it. The former president bringing everyone inside the hall definitely together with a rousing address where he framed the debate going into the home stretch of the campaign.
My fellow Americans, all of us in this grand hall and everybody watching at home, when we vote in this election, we'll be deciding what kind of country we want to live in. If you want a winner-take-all, you're on your own society, you should support the Republican ticket. But if you want a country of shared opportunities and shared responsibility, we're all in this together society, you should vote for Barack Obama and Joe Biden.
Kate Kushner, you say that's the same speech he's been making since 1992, but Is that the point today? Is that relevant today?
It's definitely relevant today. I mean, look, Clinton is a great speaker for the Democrats because he was such a great, successful politically president because he was so centrist. You know, if you looked at the other speech from last night, I think you see Elizabeth Warren, you see a speaker who is
Running
much...
for Senate in Massachusetts.
And I think she is much closer to the Obama administration in terms of her philosophy and her view of the world. I mean, last night I thought she was, one step away from arguing that we should just shut down the entire banking system. I mean, it was pretty lefty, and I don't think that's where the country is, and I think people have seen it, and that's why it's a close election.
Forrest Alanya?
I could not disagree more strongly. I think a lot of the Democratic base were very hopeful that Barack Obama would be the Hyde Park liberal that so many of us expected him to be. He has been an extraordinarily centrist president, very much in the mold of Bill Clinton, who as Keith rightly observes, was a centrist president. So I think the challenge for Obama this round is mobilizing a lot of the people who voted for him the first time around and are disappointed that he didn't go far enough in terms of some of the hopes that they had for him.
So you're taking Kate's point in that case, that if you want to energize the interest groups that are inside the hall, you need to tack left perhaps in his speech later on.
I don't know. Look, I'm just I'm not an expert in these matters. What I in terms of the demographics or what you have to look for exactly in terms of trying to build the right portfolio to convince people to vote for you. He's got a lot of people working for him who are experts in that. I'll just tell you personally, I think I think of myself as a centrist voter. I think there are a lot of Americans who are centrists out there. And it's unfortunate that the U.S. has become so very polarized in the last 10 or 15 years. And I think one of the things that Obama has been very successful at is trying to build a coalition and trying to be centrist. And I think it's the right thing to do.
At the Republican convention, Mitt Romney's big speech, a little bit overshadowed by Clint Eastwood speaking to an empty chair as a prop. That won't be the case later on.
That will not be the case later on. Thank God for the Democrats. The speech Barack Obama will give tonight will obviously be immensely important, but it will still be very hard to follow Bill Clinton's footsteps. But Barack Obama will be able to take a few cues from what Bill Clinton said. Bill Clinton was the master of bipartisanship. He developed this strategy in 1996 called the triangulation, whereby he was able to work with both the Republicans and Democrats and fight in middle ground. And this is something that Barack Obama will have to base himself on in order to if he is reelected in 2012, to be a successful president. That has been something he has not been able to do in 2008 and until 2012.
You said at the outset that most people have made up their minds, so it's more about getting out the vote.
Absolutely. It's about getting out the vote, but there are also a few messages that have to be sent. I mean, obviously getting out the vote will be extremely important, but there are people who do not know if they want to vote for Barack Obama again, who might very well be attracted to someone like Paul Ryan, who is, someone who's very smart, who's wonkish. And paradoxically, yesterday, Bill Clinton gave the speech that Paul Ryan should have gave, with the specifics on the policies, with the specifics of what would happen if the GOP was elected in November.
Freddie Winkler, what does Barack Obama have to do in that speech?
What's quite interesting is, in fact, I think this year it won't so much be a question of person as much as a question of what kind of life you want, which is, in fact, what Clinton was saying there. Because the Americans don't really like Mitt Romney, the Republicans didn't really like him, and they still chose him.
So it won't be about his personal story.
Well, that will always be there, but it's the issue is Barack Obama 4 years ago was someone you wanted to believe in, and he was this great speaker, incredible speaker. If you were there the night of the election, people were crying in the streets. It was unbelievable. So much enthusiasm because it was out of the Bush years, which are not something to be fabulously remembered. This year is not like that. He's promised a lot, and people think not just he didn't live, but something happened in the middle class in the US, which really totally cracked basically the contract that the politicians have with the middle class. if you speak to politicians in the US, they see the middle class is defined by people who believe that the kids will be better off. Most of these people today, who 4 years ago might have believed that, believe their kids will be worse off. So, then it's a question of, do you go back to wanting to be, very much to the hardcore of the Republican feeling? So we have to get rid of what we did on the health system, the arms business. So all of these things will become quite extreme for that reason. And I think what Barack Obama has to do, and he did that in fact in the clip that he put, which is forward, is to show how he's done a lot but needs to move forward with what he's doing. But still he will need to promise a way of living which will be radically different from what Romney has, which is why it's going to be interesting. Less about the people, more about what kind of society they want.
All right, on Twitter, we asked you if 4 years on, Barack Obama had lived up to your expectations. Here's what Leonard from Dallas, Texas replied. Does anybody live up to our expectations? But it's true that there will be, Forrest Alanya, the shadow of the Obama of 4 years ago when he gets up there to speak.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing quite like a clean slate, and it was a great moment for all of us. I mean, it was a historic moment, the first African-American president after 8 years of a really radical administration who did an incredible amount of damage to the United States. It was just a great experience for so many of us to have again a president that we could be proud of. I think the fact that he was awarded the Nobel Prize was a world recognition, was part of the world recognizing that this was a great moment where it was something that the world perceived as good, not just for the United States but for the rest of the world. And I mean, I can cite one example where I'm personally disappointed. I really had hoped that he would do as FDR had done during the 1930s, that he would make more of an effort to reform the financial system, that he would make more of an effort to pass laws that really would prevent the sort of crisis that we just went through. And to my disappointment, he didn't. But I think the quote that you put up from the person who tweeted that, I think that's exactly right. We, our leaders, we take them for better or for worse. He doesn't have everything we want, but I think he's got a better package than the alternative, which is essentially, if you look at the people around Mitt Romney, is essentially 4 years of what we went through during the Bush administration.
Right, I'll get Kate Kushner to react to that when we come back, because we have to take a quick break. But we will get back to you, Kate. Stay with us. This is the France 24 debate.